Well, the ultimate computer presents one of those old tried and true sci-fi plot tropes of man versus machine, because it reveals our fear that the very technology that we've developed to make life so much nicer and easier and all that will one day turn against us. But ultimately, of course, in the end, you discover that even with the machine, man is still the enemy of man. So, of course, the Enterprise gets called to do some war games. The bulk of the crew is put on the space station with the skeleton crew left on board. Kirk says, that's silly. And then it discovers, don't worry, Kirk, you're going to test out this new super-duper computer, the M5, made by the brilliant Dr. Daystrom, who's the founder of most of their computer technology that operates the ship and rest of Starfleet and the Federation, all that stuff. He's this brilliant genius guy, but that's what he did when he was young, and now he's kind of in competition with himself to top that, and now he thinks has it with this supercomputer that can do everything and do a lot of dangerous missions that people won't have to be exposed to anymore. At least that's supposed to be the goal of it all. Meanwhile, Kirk is immediately threatened by this, and they have these moments. Am I afraid of this thing, Bones? And of course, Bones, yeah, you are. Well, not quite that. But of course, he's immediately jealous of it and everything because it makes him obsolete. He's like, oh, I'm useless, and he clearly is, and is demonstrated as the computer does pretty much everything, even to the point of deciding who would be members of an away team on scientific missions and whatnot. So seemingly there would still be a crew of humans and other people on the crew of the ship, but until eventually, I guess, once they get the data androids, then they wouldn't need them anymore either. But it's always a scene where it's suggesting the members of the away team, and it's because, hey, how come you didn't include Kirk and the others? Is because they're not essential. And at first, Spock's going on, well, this is all very good, this is really brilliant work, and he's greatly respects Daystrom's work and all that. And but then even Spock, and of course this is telling us, like, Spock has no emotions. Yes, he does. He just, under the Vulcan culture, regulates them rather strictly, because he immediately catches on that Kirk's very upset about all this, and it tries to pump him up, and says, I don't want to serve. He says, I greatly admire the abilities of, computers, machines, and all that, but I do not want to serve under them. And you'd rather serve under Kirk. And then here comes, I forget the Commodore's name, but he comes in after their first test of war games, and he says something along the lines of regards to Captain Dunsel, and Kirk's all pissed off and storms off the bridge. Bones doesn't understand the nickname, and Spock explains that it's just a title for someone who serves no meaningful purpose. In other words, non-essential. So Kirk's depressed and everything. Well, finally, M5 messes up, and they come upon a robot ship, and they try to stop it, but they can't shut the thing off, and it destroys the ship. And Kirk's all mad and upset, because obviously this is really bad, and Daystrom's making excuses and stuff. But at the same time, Kirk is like, ha, yeah, all right. He's rather happy the machine did this. So you see, I'm not non-essential. So he's decided that this is, a move too far. It's got to stop. So they wanted to try to shut it off, and they can't do it. They say, well, let's cut off its power. And they try to do that, and while they're doing it down in the engine room, it seeks a new power source, and in the process zaps one of the red shirts. So they're like, holy shit. And then Daystrom says, oh, well, M5 was just looking for a new power source, and, your crewman just got in the way. Hey, shit happens. Well, Kirk wasn't going to sit still for that. But it's too late. M5 is all powerful and has taken full control of the ship, and they can't stop him. They try, but it's impossible. And I say him because, as we learned, Daystrom, in his desperation, has developed a bit of a psychosis here, in that he's trying, again, in competition with his younger self, and believing colleagues didn't respect him enough and treat him as if his past glories were mere accidents. And his desperation to prove that he can do this has pushed him over the edge, and he reflects to M5 as if M5 is his child. And M5's thinking patterns and stuff are not based on pure logic; they're based on Daystrom's own mind, and that it's kind of interesting. I just did a video about the typical impasse stories between two equally matched logical minds in the case of Destiny of the Dialects, but here Daystrom is trying to avoid that by giving human aspects to the thinking of M5. But M5 just immediately reacts to threats with lethal force. So the war games continues, but M5 doesn't understand that it's just a game, and so begins to just slaughter the fleet. It's another interesting episode where you get to see other starships in the fleet. Of course, it's all the same model of the Enterprise, but still, it's just kind of cool. It's more display of the Federation itself beyond just the Enterprise. But anyway, and of course with the later newer effects, you get a little bit of the battle between the ships, more detailed. But of course, M5 will not let the crew talk to the other ships, saying, "Hey, we're trapped. The computer's gone crazy." So the Commodore suspects Kirk has had some kind of weird breakdown. He's like, "Look, Kirk, that Dunsel thing was just a joke. Come on, man." And so they have orders to destroy the Enterprise. In the meantime, they try to get the machine to let go, and they get Daystrom to talk to it, but Daystrom, he's too far gone, and he kind of has a mental collapse, and ultimately Spock has to give him the Vulcan pinch. And it's funny because how the actor reacts to it, man, he was not expecting that. And so that's it for Daystrom, and he's going to have to, I don't know, go to a home, I guess. Poor guy. But his name is still used in later Star Treks, and his legacy is pretty well established that he was this brilliant man and founding father of their computer system. So, but he just was too depressed and all that to appreciate that he's actually recognized. But anyway, by the way, I think he's the same actor who played Blackula. So, a little tidbit there. So meanwhile, they discovered that the Kirk once again has to outfox a computer, and he questions the computer's motives and whatnot, and he talks about his ultimate mission to protect people from the dangers, because life is precious because of the rules of man and God. And Kirk says, "Well, you've murdered people," and he says, "Scan the starships, and the crew's dead and all that stuff." He says, "What's the penalty for murder?" And the computer says, "Well, death." And he says, "Well, you." And so then that's it. M5 shuts itself off, but it doesn't just shut itself off; it shuts the ship off, so they can't respond to the incoming fleet that's coming to destroy them. And then they're able to reroute power and get control. They could have raised shields, but at the end, Kirk decides, "Don't do it. That'll send them the signal that we're surrendering or what have you, and that not to open fire on them." And of course, the Commodore decides not to. And then they explain everything, But because the sentence is death, so M5 decides to commit suicide by leaving the Enterprise open to attack, which doesn't happen. So it's a pretty good episode. It's actually this display of psychology for the performance by the Daystrom character. and all of that, and of course of a man who's broken by his own achievements, and then in competition with himself more than he talks about. He suspects his colleagues didn't respect him enough and whatnot, and perhaps some may have, but ultimately it's clearly obvious that the entire society of Starfleet and everything greatly appreciates his work, and they all respect him, but he can't see it out of his own inner turmoil. And then, of course, Kirk himself and the fears of being obsolete, which in a lot of ways you see replayed, especially like in Wrath of Khan, where he's getting old and he's terrified of his own mortality. And the only way to avoid that is to remain active and on board the Enterprise. And stuff like that. So this is a pretty good episode. And, of course, it plays into the cautionary tale of being too dependent on a machine that's not always going to understand the aspects of humanity, even one that's tried to make a complete copy of the human brain. That's not always a good thing either. It's still a machine, and you don't want it in control. You need to be in control of it. And once that changes, then, well, all bets are off then. So, Ultimate Computer, very a good classic episode of Star Trek, and highly recommended. The only bad part is typical of shows and how it ends, because a lot of terrible things happened. A great man went insane, and he's kind of ruined by this incident. The deaths of fellow Starfleet members, and even one of Kirk's own crew, and all of that stuff. And then in the end, they decide to have a little giggle at Bones' expense, where Spock makes a joke. And Kirk's sitting in the chair just laughing, Well, I don't know. There was some unwritten rule that most shows have to end on a joke. It is what it is. But anyway, still, there's always going to be a little flaw here and there. But pretty good episode. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness. So many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.